Any man that has joined ICE, wants to join ICE, or supports ICE in any way has also never made a woman finish.
Everything is good. Mashallah, alhamdulillah. I really like.
An American mother from New York has been found dead in a popular tourist town in Ireland, and the person of interest has fled the country.
So today we bring you a rather sad and tragic tale of leftist empathy, whatever that word is even supposed to mean nowadays, getting people killed. And quite ironically, in this case, getting the leftists themselves killed. Because this week, an anti-ICE Free Palestine activist from America, this is an American citizen, was just found dead over in Ireland after she decided to go move there to relocate and ultimately date her Islamic migrant asylum seeker boyfriend. And you can probably figure out what happens next. It turns out her 13-year-old daughter came in and found that she had been beaten to death. Yes, it is a very gruesome and sad story. And while we can certainly sit there and do the dunking, I don't feel that is honestly necessary. The bottom line here is this is an American citizen. She had a family who loved her. She had kids, now dead at the hands of these savages, but the very people, right, who we have been trying to warn to the world, stop letting the snake into your house. To reference that famous snake poem that Trump's read a couple different times now, what have we said, first of all, about the actual nature, the actual reality of not just the political cause of Palestine or something like that, but the greater picture of whether these asylum seekers should be in Western countries to begin with? Well, here you have a white girl from the West now no longer on this earth. Very sad, very tragic. Why? Because she was ultimately misled by, like, literally suicidal political causes in this case. And we say that a lot of times, right? Suicidal empathy, that's sort of a conservative slogan, but like literally a suicidal political movement that ultimately saw her lose her life at the hands of this crazy death cult that suggests that all cultures are the same, all peoples are the same, they're completely interchangeable. Let's flood the world, let's flood our own borders to people who have absolutely no norms of, ironically, even things like basic respect for women. Hey, you shouldn't beat your wife. Many other cases of sex crimes and those types of things happening across Europe. But what else can we say? A very illuminating story, and that's why I wanted to bring it to you here today. So let's talk about this, and apparently what's going on now in Ireland after the guy is now on the run. So not only did he leave the kid without a mother, but now the Irish authorities cannot even find him. What a mess. But yet another example, right, of the supposed doctors and engineers, the diversity that's going to come to these communities and make things so much better, and the cultural enrichment just ending in death. It doesn't have to be this way. Especially doesn't have to be this way if people like, unfortunately, this girl stop falling for these political causes. But let's talk about it. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, I'd like to introduce you to, as you can see here, a girl by the name of Jamie Carney. So this is a white, kind of blonde-looking American girl, right? But as is often the case with young women in this country, you can assume what her politics are. So you look at her Instagram bio, it apparently read, first of all, Free Palestine, American in Ireland. So I guess she moved there to be with this guy that she met at a Palestine rally. You cannot make this up. One also probably has to assume there's some level of she wanted to get out of America because she's leftist. She thinks the country is bad, it's dangerous, whatever. Too right-wing. Ireland, by the way, is a kind of common expat country for a lot of disaffected leftists, so that's not very surprising. But yeah, Free Palestine, which is part of why she's dating the Islamic migrant asylum seeker, right? American in Ireland. And then thirdly, adding to the irony of this whole situation, she puts F ICE, which is to say, F the removal of violent third world criminals from Western countries. Is really, when you pull that statement back, that's what it's really saying. And then you know what happened here, right? The very people, for example, that an ICE or some type of hawkish immigration agency ought to be targeting, she sat there and said, no, no, no. right? They're really good people. They're the best of us, whatever, decides to go date one, probably assumes, oh, this is a very lovely guy. And then very sadly, right? It's kind of a story of almost naivety causing problems for people or causing the final problem for someone, it's just very unfortunate. So you see that's the boyfriend here, the family, her, et cetera, et cetera. So here's what happened next. The suspect in the murder of a New York mom who recently moved to Ireland, folks, is a Middle Eastern asylum seeker who met her at an anti-Israel protest. How more straightforward does the story have to be? The bloody body of Jamie Carney, 43, was found Tuesday afternoon by her 13-year-old daughter. So sad. At her rented home in Killarney, I believe Ireland, where she moved just 5 years ago from Westchester County, the Irish Sun had reported. So this supposed loving man, right? Islam means love or something like that, right? This supposed loving man freaking not only beats her, leaves her dead, okay? Then just takes off and runs, doesn't check to see if she's okay or whatever. But, sadly, judging by her Instagram, she seemed to think this was a lovely, amazing, sweet guy. Don't believe right-wing propaganda about these asylum seekers. And then that's what goes down. And then, very sadly for her 13-year-old daughter, like this is the scene she has to come back to. So she was beaten. She had suffered multiple head injuries, with cops probing reports that a loud argument was heard the night before at her home on a luxury housing estate. And as probably you so often know, I mean, generally speaking in West, they're going to say, oh, well, what about white people and domestic abuse? As we brought up in the prior video, oftentimes they talk about when you think of what, for example, a child predator looks like or sexual assault looks like in Western countries, there's this image that's presented to you in popular media from Hollywood that, oh, it's like some creepy white guy, or in college, it's the frat guy or something who's committing the sexual assaults. When in reality, you wonder why, for example, the cases of domestic violence, sexual assault, rape, all of those things have dramatically increased in Western countries over the past several decades. Let me say it's actually not coming from the white, let's say, heritage stock of those countries. It's actually coming from people who often are imported from the third world with values there that, ironic because they're feminist or whatever, right? But don't actually really respect women. And I don't even mean that on like a crazy feminist sense. I mean basic things such as it's not okay to hit a girl. Like, I hope that people really do comprehend and process. In most part, like that is actually a Western invention when you think about it. In most parts of the world, the idea of having a basic respect for a woman, you're a man, you're stronger, you're not supposed to hit them, et cetera, is not really something that is well recognized or practiced, right? As a matter of fact, it often is the opposite. So here you have another person. Oh, let's not forget, right? All cultures are the same. All places of the world are interchangeable. So we can argue about something as a couple and it'll be fine. He's not going to freaking try to do this to me. And then, well, there you go. There you go. So, but it goes on here with these details. The person of significant interest is apparently a 28-year-old migrant from the Middle East who had applied for asylum. So it's not just like any, keep in mind, brown person or something. We're not trying to generalize. It's literally one of the asylum seekers from the Middle East, right? 28-year-old migrant from the Middle East who applied for asylum after arriving in Ireland in 2024. Police told the Irish Independent without naming him. And then, for whatever reason, after supposedly just being this asylum seeker, he just wants safety. 2 seconds later, he is running around Western countries, participating in Palestine protests, and then trying to find himself white girls that he can ultimately, abuse and do this to. Like, how just pathetic and disgusting and sad. But there you have it. The slain mom apparently previously posted a video of herself in a kifa at a anti-Israel pro-Palestine rally, and just like what a fitting tale on, unfortunately, what a fitting tale on many levels, met basically Sharia law in action. But so there you have that. And then apparently, as we speak right now, there's a whole manhunt going on in Ireland because this guy is trying to flee to the Middle East. Like, they can't find him. They think he might have tried to leave the country because, keep in mind, she was found there. It had been some time. The guy might already be gone. So here we have, by the way, not just someone coming from, again, parts of the world with rather illiberal values that you would think contradict what leftists were supposed to believe in, but we kind of talked about that before. This is where woke is being replaced with third worldism, right? Over time, you're going to watch the left resemble much less weird Canadian hippies from the 2010s and more so just Sharia law and like South African style racial violence in politics, right? It's like, this is the third worldification of the left. So that's absolutely what's going on here. But keep in mind too, we're not just talking about one of those. Supposedly, this guy claimed he was seeking asylum, which is to say he fled the Middle East to Ireland in 2024 because he needed safety. He's being persecuted. And by the way, it turns out, first of all, who was the real threat to the safety, right? He did not need safety from the Middle East. He was the danger. He was the danger. But then secondly, you also know he's defrauding asylum if this is true. Why? Because if he was really in danger, folks, why would he now be fleeing after trying to enact Sharia law on Western soil? Why would he now be fleeing over to the very countries that he supposedly fled, right? So yet another kind of point we could make about this supposed asylum seeker situation that unfortunately, we're proven right about yet again, but nonetheless.
This was inside her home in the town of Killarney. The person of interest believed to have fled the country and may be trying to reach Jordan or Syria, we are told.
Oh, back to Jordan and Syria? You mean to tell me the part of the world that he allegedly fled from because he was fleeing war or persecution or something like that? And by the way, why do these people always have to end up in, let's say, Ireland of all places? Aren't there a bunch of stable Middle Eastern countries next door? Why don't they take these refugees or asylum seekers? Why don't they? I mean, wouldn't you think it should be more compatible? Because after all, they're fellow Muslims, closer cultures, closer language, things like that. I don't know. Or is it the case that the Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, UAE, these countries are actually in some ways smarter than Western governments, knowing, hey, that's actually in many cases the worst of society. They're basically like disaffected, violent, fighting age men. That's why very often they turn into terrorists, murderers, rapists, criminals, things like that. We don't want them here, but keep on going over there. And then it turns out, yeah, he's not even an asylum seeker, right? So, like, again, I'm really not trying to gloat about this. It's a very sad story. But if you ever needed so many different right-wing narratives kind of proven correct in one single thing that happened, whether it's the culture, the values of the people coming here, the immigration policy of should they even be here, the fact, by the way, that we often bring up, they're defrauding refugee or asylum processes, like they're not actual asylum seekers, they're committing violence. This is what they're doing very often. Yes, it is typically per capita on average, sometimes more naive Western women who are politically supporting this stuff and falling for it on average, right? Not saying all, obviously, but you know, this is sort of a thing, right? The naive leftist girl who falls for this, and then like what happens? What very sadly happens, right? And it even, for example, as I said again, is like another case of where third world is actually kind of killing woke. That's been a theory we've been presenting in a couple of different cases as of late, which is to say, you know, it's been kind of this paradox for the past decade or so that conservatives often ask, how can something like the jihadis and the woke feminist LGBT movement coexist alongside each other? Like, there seems to be this internal contradiction within the leftist coalition, and that's absolutely true. But what I've predicted is that especially as the leftist coalition becomes more and more essentially foreign, right? They keep importing more third worlders to fill in their ranks. As you see causes like Palestine ultimately take center stage over, let's say, feminism. When's the last time you heard about that? Or even Pride Month, which was notably muted this year, largely because of the focus on Palestinian issues, is that, again, I believe that in many ways, you'll start to see over time, because a lot of these third worlders, they may have genuine resentment toward white people, Christianity, Western civilization, all of those things, but their social values aren't exactly what you would call woke, right? What we call Sharia law, something like woke hippie, is that tolerant to LGBT or even first wave feminism or any of those things? No, obviously not the case, but you're going to start to notice that take over, right? Which is why I've said, pointing out how leftist politics over time will start to resemble more so third world communist dictatorship style stuff, where it's just like this violent South Africa, Rhodesia style race war going on, rather than hippie old school liberalism. So which is to say, right, over time, the third world will start to kill off woke. And in this case, so we've been trying to argue that, right? And here you have a case literally where in a physical sense, third world kills woke, right? We have like a woke white girl here. She tries to, get with a third worlder. And then like, what does the third worlder do? It's almost the metaphor for everything currently happening, right? And to the woke people out there, maybe that should be a warning, but I think it is honestly the case that the affliction that causes leftism in many ways is an inability to sense danger, right? And actually, we talked about this before, but the science has studied this, right? That leftists on average actually have significantly smaller amygdalas, which is the part of your brain that processes danger, than conservatives. And when you think about that for a moment, and you think about all the things leftists believe that are genuinely insane and like suicidal, like sometimes actually on many levels, such as the open borders or the open jails, free the criminals, all this type of stuff, it makes perfect sense, right? I mean, we did a video earlier this year. Anyone remember that whole situation in New York outside of Mamdani's mansion where you had a right-wing protest going on, a left-wing counter-protest, and then amongst this crowd of white liberals, there was that jihadi who threw the IED, literally a bomb, into the crowd. And we talked about this at the time, right? So luckily for everyone involved, the IED did not detonate. Like he screwed up, it failed, but NYPD investigated. That was a real bomb. And what you saw literally happen in that moment, and I actually use this as another example. It's like leftism is this mental affliction where the part of your brain that processes danger doesn't actually work. So what immediately happened, this jihadi, I believe he screamed Allahu Akbar or whatever, but he throws the bomb. The right-wing protesters immediately scatter. They're immediately running away because they're like, oh, some Muslim guy just chucked something. He screamed at us. Danger, danger, danger. That's what the conservative brain registers because our amygdalas work properly, right? We have what you might even call survival instincts. Whereas the leftists, and we showed this on the video, go find it on our channel if you want, they literally just stood there and they're like, oh, what's going on? And even after the fact, Walt Masterson is sitting there laughing like, haha, these conservatives all ran and we thought it was just like a shoe or something like that. And then it turns out later, oh, he threw an actual bomb and you guys all might have gotten seriously hurt had he actually like detonated it correctly. Very fitting. But in that moment, right, what happened? Danger was actually like real danger. Like this right here. Real danger was in front of all of their faces. The conservatives knew it was danger. They said, run, run, run. This is bad, right? And the same is true with migration. The same is true with criminal justice policy. This person is showing us they're a violent criminal. We see that. We're going to keep them in jail. We don't want them around us, right? Survival instinct. But in another fitting metaphor, those leftists just sat there and they didn't know. They didn't know anything was wrong. They didn't sense danger. And unfortunately, right, I'm not celebrating, but unfortunately, they could have all gotten seriously hurt because they had no ability to process danger. So that's exactly, I would argue, kind of what's going on here on a massive level, right? As we've played many times the snake poem from Trump. In fact, I think this is the perfect time to display it. But the story here of kind of what summarizes, I guess, what's wrong with them and their politics.
Who has heard the poem called The Snake? On her way to work one morning, down the path along the lake, a tender-hearted woman saw a poor, half-frozen snake. His pretty-colored skin had been all frosted with the dew. Poor thing, she cried, I'll take you in, and I'll take care of you. The border. Take me in, O tender woman. Take me in, for heaven's sake. Take me in, O tender woman, sighed the vicious snake. She clutched him to her bosom. You're so beautiful, she cried. But if I hadn't brought you in by now, oh heavens, you would have died. She stroked his pretty skin again and kissed him and held him tight. But instead of saying thank you, that snake gave her a vicious bite. I have saved you, cried the woman, and you've bitten me, heavens, why? You know your bite is poisonous, and now I'm going to die. Oh, shut up, silly woman, said the reptile with a grin. You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in.
Yep, exactly. It is sad to say it, but there is no better way to summarize this story than the snake poem right there. And it almost feels like the moment where Western men have to step up and like rein in women like this, but obviously they're not allowed to do that, right? Because that's feminism. You can't tell a woman what to do. You can't like steer them in a better direction, even though you can't even try to protect the woman of your country from danger from like crazy foreign invaders, right? Because you know how that stuff goes. And so we're just supposed to sit here and allow for girls like this to not only put themselves in danger, but put the country in danger through their voting habits and all that. And that's just like, unfortunately, the way it works. But yeah, just yet another cautionary tale about not letting in snakes in your house, and especially not taking care of them. And, you know, yeah. What else do we have to say? Anyways, that said, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Prayers for her daughter and her family. Terrible situation. God bless and peace.